Across Wales, people are already building a better future in their businesses, their communities and everyday life. GreenWales brings those stories to life. Wales Future First brings in the voices shaping what comes next, because the future of Wales isn't something far away, it's something we're building right now together. Today I'm joined by Gareth Banks, an industrial designer with over 20 years experience, now working as Head of Sustainability at Orange Box here in South Wales. Gareth brings a hands-on approach to sustainable design, thinking about how products are made, used and ultimately reused at the end of their life. While also bringing people together, like initiatives through People Planet Pint, to turn ideas into action. Gareth, it's great to have you with us today. How are you and how are things?
I'm really good, thank you. Yeah, it's fantastic to be here. Thanks for the invite.
It's a pleasure to have you in the studio today, and thank you for giving up your time to come in as well.
No problem.
We're asking every guest the same set of questions to build a shared picture of Wales and its future. So let's begin. When you think about Wales in 20 to 30 years, what does a good future actually look like?
Wow.
Big questions
you
on
have
this show.
posed some big lumpy, nothing easy for people to
No,
answer.
but positive.
Yeah,
hopefully.
absolutely. Well, I mean, 20 to 30 years' time is kind of 2050, isn't it? More or less.
Yeah.
Which is kind of one of those big dates that we've been thinking about in a long, long time. So, I'm very much hoping that Wales has got its head round all of these big challenges, that we're already making good progress on. But if I close my eyes and think about where I want Wales to be, I want Wales to have cracked the kind of energy resilience challenge. We're doing really well already, but I think there's so much more work to be done there. I can see a Wales in 2050 which has kind of done really well on food resilience as well. This is another thing, a couple of projects that are really close to my heart. And I think that's another thing that we really need to work on. And also, perhaps even more so, where are we with nature and how restorative we can be to bringing our natural world back to where it should be as well. So that's another thing where I think about 2050. I'm really hoping that Wales can be in a really good shape on all of those 3 points. But there's a lot of work to do. I'm probably I think I've been told ever since I was at junior school onwards that I'm kind of ridiculously optimistic.
Good.
But I think, I see what's happening here in South Wales. I can only ever reflect on kind of what's around me and what I see people doing. So I know there's loads of good work to do still. But it's, I've got nothing but optimism for the future.
Yeah, and I would probably concur with GreenWales and go on tour. All I feel is hope and optimism, because I am seeing everything we need happening. It might be a bit, small at the moment and just building, because we need to build these things aggressively, I think, really scale them up. But I do see the answers for Wales. And I think, with our natural landscape, our natural resource, the land that we have all the answers in our country. And I think it's just us getting a bit of a grip and empowering the people of Wales to do it. Yeah. And I hope that that's what the Wellbeing Future Generations Act is sort of all about.
Yeah.
And seeing it being embedded over the last 10 years, it does give you reason to go, yeah, okay, great, this is really good. But the next 10 years are going to be more pressured, because the longer you take to implement these things, the more pressure there is and the more that it costs.
The bigger the challenges, yeah. And of course, hope in itself is a great word. I love it because it's very motivational, but we can't rely on hope. That's the one thing that I think all of us working in sustainability have a real clear vision of. We need intent and intention. These outcomes don't happen on their own. But yeah, lots of great outcomes pulling in the right direction already. So,
and I think you said a word there, vision. And it's just like, and you say hope. And you bang on. We have this hope because we all have. I think everybody has climate anxiety. I think people in sustainability deal with it by doing. Whether that's you doing your People Planet Pipe, whether that's me doing GreenWales, that tackles my climate anxiety, and that vision. Hopefully, then is again the Wellbeing Future Generations Act and the things going through the Senedd and having the laws and legislations coming through. That gives us the vision, but it's about how we act on the laws and legislations going forward, and hopefully that will steer the country into an amazing position for the future, which is what I hope. So here's a nice one for you. What responsibility does your role carry in protecting that future? What part do you play, Gareth?
Well, I made a very deliberate move within the business that I work for. Because as you very kindly said in your introduction, I have been a designer for the same business for a very long time. So I've been designing bits of furniture for Orange Box for over 20 years. And I was a design consultant at a consultancy in Cardiff before that. So I have been designing stuff for a long time. But I think, like a lot of designers, we're getting to the point where we realise there's enough stuff in the world, and enough people putting more stuff in the world. I asked myself the question a few years ago, have we got enough people working on sustainability? So I took a sideways step. So I now work for the same business, but I tackle, most of my day job is tackling that big question, what are we doing? What does deep decarbonisation look like for Orange Box, for the business that I work for? How can we tackle reducing our impacts right across the board? So looking at operational impacts as well. So I have a very strong operational remit because Orange Box has got 2 big factories here in South Wales where we manufacture our furniture. We've also got 2 showrooms in the United Kingdom, one in London, one in Huddersfield. All of these operational facilities use energy and heating and the usual things. So there's that to worry about.
Yeah.
And then there's all of those other impacts as well that kind of fall outside of the kind of energy related, how our staff get to work, and we use this tool called the greenhouse gas protocol, which sounds pretty dry and boring.
Sounds big.
But it is really useful. It is, it's a toolkit that can be used by businesses anywhere in the world. And it helps, especially big businesses, just map and measure where their greenhouse gas impacts come from, business-wide, right across the business. And it helps us focus on where we can put our resources to drive those impacts down over the next couple of decades. So that, as well, is a big part of my job, a big part of my role at Orange Box, and part of this decarbonisation, because it helps us see that, yes, we've got loads of kind of energy related impacts, which fall under what get described as scope 1 and scope 2 impacts, getting into the technical weeds. But really, it's our value chain, which is the important chunk. Whether it's talking about Orange Box specifically or any manufacturing business, it's the materials that we use, where they come from, and the energy required to get them out of the ground and process them into chair components. That's where most of the kind of meat and gravy is. So that's where most of my work goes into, is working with our design team to make sure that we're designing the right products in the right way, out of the right materials, and thinking about not only how to decarbonise the business, but more importantly, because it has a much bigger impact, how to decarbonise every product that we make and simply make them last longer. This is the biggest challenge, is to make products which can have a second life, a third life. We really need to reevaluate our viewpoint on materials.
So can I ask a question around the sort of, you sort of touched on it, like the circular economy value of the stuff that you do then? So you pretend you've just been a brand new chair, it's gone out to a local university that you're supplying, or a big business, and it's done 10 years. Do you expect the chair to last 10 years? And let's pretend it's coming back to you. Do you have a second life for it, or do you have a system that comes through to give it another life?
Yes, I'm glad to say, we've got something, because my challenge is both at the product level, but also and even harder at the business level.
Yeah.
So designing sustainable products, I think, is probably the easy bit. My experience, and that sounds kind of weird, and my experience over the last 3 or 4 years, working solely in sustainability at Orange Box, is that the challenge is adapting, especially big businesses, to be more circular. Businesses are much harder to change the design of a business than it is to change the design of a product. So we've been working on sustainable product design for quite a long time. But I'm really glad to say that this idea of adapting Orange Box to be a more circular business, we're starting to make some real traction there as well. So this idea of having business models that can support getting products back after their first life or second life and bringing them back to as good as new condition, so that they can be used again and again. That's where we're starting to move towards.
And I guess if you start doing that, you start to save money as well then, because your supply chains are smaller as well, so your carbon footprint's smaller. So there's wins across everything. And the next question I have, and we can sort of focus on Orange Box, but we can also touch on the Wellbeing Future Generations Act. So it says, where are we still reacting instead of preventing? And you might have that in the story of the role that you have and the industry that you're sort of representing to a certain extent.
Yeah. You've just touched on something really interesting there about materials.
Yeah.
And potentially now, not just Orange Box, but other businesses as well are starting to see materials or the products that we create as banks for materials. Because one of the challenges that's becoming more and more apparent for manufacturers is, I think, we're still reacting to what Brexit and COVID have done to a lot of sectors, manufacturing as well. So one of the challenges for manufacturing businesses is supply chains have been turned on their head over the last 10 years. And our capacity to get hold of materials, we used to kind of almost take it for granted that there's an endless supply of materials. We could get them at a cost that we're happy with. That's not always the case now.
No.
So the circular economy is also, as well as being a smart thing to do around decarbonisation, it's also a really smart way of kind of mitigating supply chain risk as well.
Yeah.
Because we're, to a certain extent, starting to generate some of our turnover from the remanufacturing of existing products using existing materials rather than trying to source new. Because sourcing new materials is getting harder and more complex, and that is only going to get worse in the future.
And we're seeing that in the short term at the moment with what's going on in Iran and the costs of fuel, and that's going to have an impact on supply chain. So if it hasn't rippled through next, as a company in 6 months, you're going to have those costs coming through. So if you're able to insulate yourself by having, I like that, a bank of materials. So it's like money locked in materials. So you want that, which would have normally gone to landfill, it would have normally gone somewhere else, but actually the company now and companies are seeing the value in these supply chains, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So here's a little one then, and again, you can go about it in two different ways. It can either be a Future Gen's perspective across Wales, or you can use it in Orange Box, like everything here. So what's a long-term trade-off we're not being honest about? And it's the hardest question, that, because you're kind of being asked to be a little, not negative, but they are trade-offs when it comes to what we do in life and how we go forward and the life that we live now, and maybe the trade-offs are going to have to happen in the future.
Yeah. I think around climate, I mean, there's so many things that we could talk about here, because there's a lot of topics that we're not being honest about. The trade-off from an Orange Box point of view, from a manufacturer's point of view, one of the big challenges is how do manufacturers confront this acknowledgement that we live on a finite planet with finite resources. And there is enough stuff in the world already to keep us going for decades. Whether we're talking about clothes or televisions or cars or furniture, how much more do we really need? And this is a very, very difficult question, especially if you're in the manufacturing business.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to just, the easiest thing to do for any manufacturer is just shut up shop. Yeah, suddenly your carbon footprint drops really quickly. But the social impact of doing that, across the country is would be crazy.
Yeah.
So it's for businesses like ours to work out how slowly but surely we can make these trade-offs between how we create value, how we can decouple how we create value from using new resources all the time.
And I guess it's how growth is done as well, because the supply chain is reliant on you as well. And that's something that people don't talk about much, because if you don't use your supply chains, there's not a huge knock-on effects immediately. So it's that decoupling is sort of how growth is done, and it's how you probably knit yourself more into society and more into establishments and collaborate more. But it's not the traditional way of doing business, is it?
No, it isn't. No, no, no. Which makes it difficult, which makes it slow, and you have to be very careful and cautious and deliberate about it. But I'm going to pick up on that word you've just used, growth, because I think that's another thing that we really need to be honest about, is our economic system that we operate within, and this idea of growth for the sake of growth, year upon year. We're telling ourselves a lie if we think that works, forever. So, blimey, none of us have got all the answers to that, because that is a huge question that no one person has got the answer to. But I do think it's one of those, it falls into that category of one of these lies that we need to confront sooner rather than later.
What I keep seeing in all my interviews, that keeps coming up time and time and time again, is how growth is measured. Because we keep saying if we grew by 10% tomorrow, does that mean the people in the lowest parts of society have grown 10%? No, it doesn't. It just means the people at the top are 10% richer, and a lot richer normally than that as well.
Yeah.
On my theory, what I'd love to see, because it's how you measure growth, and I'd love growth to be measured by the accomplishment of the Future Generations Act. So how much we're aligning to the Future Generations Act. When it comes to GDP and growth and that aggressive form of growing, for me, it's the Future Generations Act for Wales and the Act and how that's done. And I'd love us to be measured by how we adopt the Future Generations Act of Wales, because some countries do it by happiness.
Yeah.
I think that's New Zealand.
Bhutan.
Bhutan.
I think, they're probably, there's probably a great long list.
There probably is a few.
But
yeah.
As far as I recall, Bhutan is very famous for measuring gross domestic happiness.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way of doing things, because that's well-being. You said something as well about if you shut up shop tomorrow, the social impacts would be great. And I think sometimes people don't really grasp what that is, because you're like, oh, it just means you're not there anymore. But actually, if people don't have an income, they can't have food on the table, they can't go on holidays, they don't have that quality of life. Yeah. And that's where it'd be all nice if we could all just do whatever we wanted, but we all do need to earn money, and the world does revolve around that certain way of being. But do we all need to be rich? And I think that's the big challenge here. And I think, again, for me, that's where the Future Generations Act is all about equality and everybody having a good life and everybody having the right opportunities, and I see things, we talk in interviews about my children having a forest school. I didn't have that, and I'm sure you didn't as well when you were a kid growing up. No. I was in a Victorian playground, So there's things now, when you look back and you look forward, you're like going, yes, some things aren't as great, but actually there are plenty of things to be really excited about, and what impact that's going to have. I didn't really get into gardening and green ways of living until I was about 30. So if my daughter got into that at the age of 4, what is she going to be like when she's 30? I'm really excited to see, and I think she'll embed sustainability in her life much easier than I did, I think COVID is what helped me get access. I think a lot of people I interview, they all started from COVID. Yeah. Because they had a break. They had time to reflect.
Well, we saw during COVID, we had a much sharper focus on the things that we really valued all of a sudden. And the type of jobs that we really valued during that emergency. And that's another word that has been used recently because of the work around the National Emergency Briefing, that fantastic film, the People's Emergency Briefing on Climate and Nature, because this is one of the things that I think is why we're not moving fast enough. Is because people aren't viewing it as an emergency, and maybe that is down to education. Maybe that is we've not been given enough of the right information to view it as the way we probably ought. That's why for People Planet Pint, I was really kind of chuffed to bits to be able to, the Pontypridd People Planet Pint ended up by coincidence being the Welsh premiere of the People's Emergency Briefing film, which was brilliant.
It was packed as well.
It was, yeah.
When I went in there, I was like, nervous. This is awesome. It felt energizing just to be in that room.
Yeah. And that's what people need. People need good, honest facts, not overblown. It's really slightly terrifying that we're in a world where this idea of the truth is becoming quite difficult to discern. Yeah. So that's why people's pieces of work like that, which you can just tell are just robust and solid, not full of hyperbole, just telling people, look, this is what's happening, and this is the likely outcome. That's all people need to know to make good decisions.
Yeah, and you're saying like, I think the issue in some ways why the emergency and the briefing, why it's probably not cutting across, is because there's countless emergencies happening across the world, and a lot of this is due to the climate and it's changing and global instability and all the rest of it. And I think people are so overwhelmed by the emergencies going on in the world, but also we talk a lot about social media and how overwhelming it can be, because it's that scroll based, always looking, getting those high octane sort of hits, and then you just want to turn it off, and these days, back 20 years ago, you'd watch the news at 6 o'clock and everyone would watch it because they want to know the news, but now you can watch the news 24/7, and you can watch every news channel and get every opinion you want. I had to buy a new TV not so long ago because the one blew up, and it's only internet now on my TV. It's really weird not having a terrestrial option. I'm like, oh my God. So when someone's on an online meeting upstairs, it just stops working. But the weird thing is I've got access to channels, which is great, but it's really overwhelming to see all the channels that I've got.
Yeah.
And I don't touch any of them.
Yeah.
But for me, my viewing habits are completely on YouTube now, because I can watch what I want, when I want, and at the pace that I want. And weirdly, we watch a lot of sounds really weird this, but maybe some well-being background music where it's a nice waterfall and a beautiful log cabin, and it's just there because it keeps the kids calm, it keeps us chilled, because life's crazy enough without having everything going on in the background anyway.
It's interesting to hear you talk about that, because the information that we've got coming into our lives, I think, is so influential.
Yeah.
There's this idea that the generations, your daughter, your children, our children, are going to come into the world kind of ready to fix it, or so much more. But I think the reality is they have 1,000 times more challenge there than we ever did, because the amount of screen time that the kids have got these days, they're just bombarded with messages in a way that we never were.
Yeah.
So I think it's, you mentioned the idea of a forest school. I absolutely love those kind of ideas when I see them as well, because you kind of know if you showed your average 6-year-old 20 different logos, they would probably be able to kind of pick them out off a screen. If you showed them 20 different species of trees, how many would they get? How many would we get?
Yeah.
And this is because of the imbalance of information.
But I sort of counter argue to a certain extent, because I think you're right with children and screen time and all the rest of it. But I think they are fantastic things like the Merlin Bird app. I never had access to that as a child.
Yeah.
And I can just download this thing for free. When me and my daughter are walking to school, I just put it on. We listen to what's out there. She's learning bird song. I'm learning bird song. We're connected with Nature Straight. I never had that. We got Bumblebee Conservation Survey app. Sounds crazy. There's people at home. Sorry for that. But you can literally download a free app. Shows you all the different bees, and you can look at the bees. You go, oh, it looks like this. The stripes. You go, oh, it's a queen. All this information is now there for all of us. And we didn't make a massively concerted effort with our daughter. We never put a screen in, we never bought her a tablet. She never had that, because we sort of knew too much screen time. We wanted to be parents, we wanted to be there with her and have that outdoors experience with her, so we always prioritized that. And weirdly, I think she has less screen time than I ever did.
Yeah.
When I came home from school, because again, TV was more, I think, precious back then. It was more in the house, just right there. You come home from school, Neighbours is on, CBBC was on a certain time of the day, and you sat there and you watched it, and that was an everyday, watched your soaps, your EastEnders, your Emmerdales, all the rest of it. Yeah. That structure's gone. It's completely gone now. And in some ways it's out of control because you can do whatever you want, but it's easier to avoid, I think, in some ways as well. And yeah, I think my children get less screen time than I did.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that's a concerted effort I've subconsciously made.
I definitely think it is. I mean, you're minded in a certain way, Gareth.
Yeah, I guess so.
Definitely. And do you represent everybody in the United Kingdom? No, you're as green as can be. Come on. And your
I'm
children will
not,
be.
and
of
that's not a
course.
bad thing, you know. But I just
no, of course it's not. It's not meant as
no,
an accusation.
no. I think this is where my hope and my sort of positivity gets the better of me sometimes, because I just hope that everybody's doing the same sort of thing. But then when you think people are home and it's like, I'm just trying to earn a living. We both have to go to work. The kids, I've seen some children that are in delivery cars with their dads because there's no childcare at home. The only thing, they go into, Cardiff and all over the valleys and stuff delivering. They got a tablet in their hands because that's better for them than actually, I'm lucky, I guess. I guess I'm really lucky.
But you're right in terms of some of the information that we've got available to us, like the Merlin app. I mean, I use that almost every day, and it takes me forever to walk through any woodland. Especially because it's great for. Have you used it to actually call birds? Because this is next level, right?
What?
So if you're an amateur bird watcher, as I am, this is a trick a friend of mine, Richie Evans from Pontypool, who might well be watching. He is an avid bird fanatic and puts up an awful lot of bird boxes all over South Wales. He does some great work.
Good man.
Yeah, he's got a thing about pied fly catchers and red starts especially. So yeah, he's always trying to kind of get their species numbers up.
Yeah, nice.
But he taught me how to use the app to actually bird call as well, which is
Right.
kind of it's so simple. You can't believe you've never done it, but once you've done it once,
Come on. So I'm on the edge of my seat.
well, so if you're like normally bird watching can be easy, but normally you'll hear birds before you see them. Right?
Yes.
So if you want to if you want to up your bird watching to the next level, if you hear a cuckoo, you might be lucky and see where it's coming from. You might actually see it in a tree, kind of 200 meters away if you've got your binos with you. If you call it though, if you use your Merlin app or one of the other free apps to actually call a cuckoo, it will come over. And all of a sudden, instead of seeing a little dot in a tree 200 meters away, it'll be 10 meters away, kind of trying to talk to your Merlin app. And it just supercharges your bird watching.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You'll thank me for this.
I'm in. That's amazing. See, and that's when we bring people on the channel. Everyone's got something. I was with a forager yesterday called Adele Noziger.
Right.
Or Nozida. Sorry, Adele. Have you heard of it?
No.
Have a look at her books. She's phenomenal. She's based up in Brecon. And I interviewed her yesterday, and we were just walking down this street. Just this common little street. And she's like, oh, this is that, this is that, this is that. And I was like, ah, just getting engulfed with all these flavours. And it just felt like it just opened another door.
Yeah.
Like I just felt free. Because we were chatting. I said, oh, my mum was always like, don't put that in your mouth. Don't eat that. So I got taught at a young age, just don't eat anything.
Yeah.
Anything wild. And even yesterday when I came home and I was talking to her, I said, yeah, get it. Because you can eat a dandelion, you can eat the leaves. They're really good for you. The roots are awesome. The roots are like a coffee, but they're really sweet. The leaves, I think, have vitamin K in them. Have a check, but they're incredibly good for you. Everything, stem, the whole lot. So I told my daughter, and she's quite free with all of this. She's only 8, bless her, today. And
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. She brought the flour in. She went to go and eat it. My mum was like, don't do it. You've got to wash it first. And she was like, oh, what? And she said, you have to wash it because cats would have peed on it. And I was like, they may have. Yeah, go wash it. That's fine. Go wash it. But it just those stoppages.
Yeah.
And that was me totally. But yesterday I had sorrel, like wild sorrel.
Yeah.
And I think, if I remember correctly, because I tasted so many things, it tasted like a crab apple.
Right.
But when I ate it, it felt like I was eating like a full apple.
Yeah.
I felt like Willy Wonka, like one of the customers of Willy Wonka, when they go, oh, eat this, it'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
And my mind was so blown just spending an hour with her. And she was just phenomenal. And she's got some amazing books out there. There's a tree forager book, there's a hedgerow forager book, there's a garden forager book. She's been going for a long time and she's like one of the experts. And they're all rituals, it's all stories of Wales. It's phenomenal.
Sounds cool.
Please look
I will
it
look
up.
out
Please
for
look
it.
it up. Yeah, she's going to be great. And she'll be on the grassroots version of the channel as well. So, right, we've deviated quite far, which is what I like. I like doing this. So, bring us right back down to earth. So, you've talked about some of the organisations you've worked with. You've talked about some of the work that you do. So, where does the long-term thinking break down in practice? And what does that look like on the ground?
The challenge is, I guess, in the delivery of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And we were lucky enough to have Derek Walker come into Orange Box a few weeks ago and spend some time with us as part of the Chambers Wales Sustainability Group, which was fantastic. Because he doesn't always get to, as often as he would like to, hear about the challenges that businesses have. Because because the Act does have a public sector focus, a lot of people probably think that it doesn't even relate to the private sector, and of course it does in so many ways, in every way. So I really feel for the work that he and his office has to do, because there is still this big challenge. I know it's not his job to fix it; it's his job to observe,
Influence.
yeah. But when it comes to furniture, for instance, there's still an awful lot of projects where, to be honest, I'm on the sustainability side of Orange Box. So although I do get involved in projects when it comes to kind of giving some customers advice, I'm not a customer facing role.
Yeah.
So I don't see it as much as I should, but I do see a lot of projects for things like where we're building new universities or any kind of public sector spend, where there's some great decisions made, right? And I'm not trying to push Orange Box products. I'm just talking about in the context of making good decisions. Welsh public sector spending happening in Wales, supporting Welsh businesses. Even if that happens through the procurement process, it so often breaks down before the end, because when projects, as they always do, inevitably overrun, things change, quarters have to be cut, we've got to save £5,000 here, 10 grand there. So often I see the ambition of the Act falling at the last hurdle, and all of a sudden, the furniture that ends up in XYZ building is a cost-focused purchase rather than, the most sustainable option or the most circular option. So, that's where I see it day to day.
Yeah, and I guess it's how projects are prioritised then, is it? Or how they prioritise the spend. And it's difficult because buildings are trying to be net zero, passive standards, and you just can't cut back on those things, And if you think the student experience, I'm just using a university because you sort of jumped on that one, but if a building's built for a certain purpose, you can't cut the studio out, but what you fill it in with, I think they call it hard FM is everything in the building attached, and soft FM is if you turn it upside down and shake it, everything that falls out. It's soft FM.
Yeah.
That's what I learned when I was working at the university. That's how they taught me what hard and soft FM means.
That sounds
Facilities
perfect.
management, is that what it means, FM?
FM, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. See, I've learned some stuff. But the stuff that falls out when you turn it upside down, that's all the stuff that does suffer.
Yeah.
And it is a shame, but I'm hoping the more and more we go down this path, one, it does get cheaper, but two, so say the product you sell to them, there's an agreement that that product will go back to the same company, be remade, repurposed, and sold back for a cheaper rate. So, and I think with everything, and what the Act is trying to do is all about long term. So you're not looking at the next 5 years, you're looking at the next 20 years, minimum 10 years of a product. So when you're going into an agreement with a company, yeah, if the costs go on or go higher, it's fine, because later on you're going to get those costs back, and maybe that's the way we should. And again, it's all about long term, and I think that is what would improve. I think the outcomes for everything. Okay, great, thank you. So a nice positive one now for you. So if Wales fully embodied the spirit of the Future Generations Act, what would feel different for you day to day, do you think?
Well,
fully embodied it, the whole thing happened, and you're like, yes.
Yeah. Well, everywhere you look, the outcomes of planet positive action are always good. This is kind of what's so frustrating about why aren't we moving quicker? Because everywhere you look, lower impact energy, you'd have healthier buildings, you'd have healthier food, you'd have healthier people. It's just kind of win-win-win. So, yeah, I mean, it's almost coming back to where we started, closing our eyes and, if we've got it right, what does a healthy 2050 look like? I feel like we're back there.
Yeah, clean cars, people are cycling,
Yeah.
everyone's happier,
Yeah.
everyone's well-being's there, everyone's more equal as people. Yeah.
I'm always trying to, I feel like I'm still trying to convince people that lifestyle choices that we can all make,
Yeah.
like planet positive lifestyle choices, they don't need to be compromises. I've come here on my bike today.
Yeah, I know, I love that.
It wasn't a compromise in any way because I probably got here quicker than I would in a car. And I've had the most delightful ride. I've come down through the parks, through, using the Taff Trail. So I've had kind of, miles and miles of bluebells and wild garlic and,
Birds.
yeah, exactly. Seeing herons
Yeah.
gliding over the Taff.
Instead of being in traffic and congestion, covered
exactly.
in pollution, and
Yeah.
and also when you leave, because we're in the city centre, as in any afternoon, it'd be a lot slower leaving.
Yeah.
Where if you're on the bike, you just get to wave goodbye.
And a lovely thing, as I was coming into kind of North Cardiff, Whitchurch on the Taff Trail, I started to see how Cardiff Council is spending its money now in infrastructure to support, active travel. They've redone a huge chunk of the Taff Trail, of the pathway,
Great.
where it was before. You get ready to kind of lump up and down over tree roots, yeah. But they've widened the path from Whitchurch. It's about a half a mile, maybe a mile or so. So they've widened it. They've just made it absolutely fantastic for cyclists and also for people walking up and down the trail as well. So little by little, that's what we want to see is kind of investments in the right place.
Yeah, and you talk about that, and I'll highlight the 20 mile an hour thing across Wales. Like there's a lot of kickback. Even myself, when it first came in, I was like, it was implemented poorly. That's what I'd say about the 20 mile an hour act. It was not implemented very well. It's been revised and it's been tweaked ever so slightly. Weirdly now, I've said this in a previous interview, from my street it was 20, then it goes to 30 through a forest and 20 again. They were going to revert the whole thing to 30. Now my street is a single track cul-de-sac with half a pavement. Really dangerous. I got a 2-year-old, 8-year-old. The street's full of young kids. So I went and I planned against it. And what we've ended up doing is instead of going 20, 30, 20 and all of it going to 30, it's now all 20 because we see the benefit.
Yeah.
And actually slowing down and taking life a little bit slower is much healthier. And what I'm seeing now across the Rhondda is the running clubs are exploding.
Yeah.
The people I see running, compared to 10 years ago, it's triple. People cycling, it's tripling. The mountain biking is huge now across the way. And all these benefits, they're just coming. Maybe sometimes kicking and screaming a little bit. And that's because nobody likes change. No one even I don't like change. And we're humans are built not to like change. We're not. We get into our patterns and we like it and we like to stick to it. And even if it's a good thing, sometimes a little bit hand holding, a little bit of dragging sometimes, and it's good for us. And when councils then do exactly the sort of things you're talking about, it just makes you go, next time I'm definitely doing this. I definitely don't have to think about that. My tires are going to be a bit better. My frame's going to be stronger on the bike. I'm not going to be so jiggled around by the time I get there.
And it's that emotional connection to the change, isn't it? I mean, some of the work that I've done at Orange Box has been around kind of behavioural change with our staff. We've got over 300 people that work for us, and using things like the Carbon Literacy Project to make sure that everybody understands what the basics are around climate change. Because it's a really mixed bag. And right across the business, from the boardroom right the way down and up again, you can never tell like who is really already well versed in climate knowledge. It doesn't matter, from what I've seen, where you are in the business. But I think it really helps if you can try and batter people all day with data. It gets
Doesn't
you
work,
absolutely
does it?
nowhere.
It doesn't work.
No. But if you can make an emotional connection for why that change is a good idea, and for anybody that's got young children, it's really easy for us to see. To make that emotional connection of, why our streets can be instantly safer. And we're starting to see, what is it, a year plus since we made that change here in Wales. And the statistics don't lie. The amount of people, the amount of our population that is still alive because of that change is huge. And that's what we should be referring back to.
Yeah, no, and you know, this leads me on to a nice part of another question, which is, if someone watches this conversation in 30 years' time, what decision would you hope Wales made today?
Well, I hope we can stick to energy resilience, like really, really making sure we stick to this commitment to renewables. That will be the one that at every level, in our homes, in every business, because it all boils down to energy at the end of the day. You know, when I think about the greenhouse gas accounting that I do at Orange Box, and why our scope 3, our value chain impacts are so big, is because they are basically accruing all of the all of the energy impacts of all of our suppliers. So that's what it boils down to, is how we're using energy, and I think it's one of the most important facets that I think from a Welsh government perspective, I would love to see just, you know, a really strong commitment to renewables. I think it would really help.
Do you know something that give me because it's normally only people who can afford it get it. You know, I say because as you said, I sustainability through and through, but proudly as well.
Yeah.
But I saved for 5 years, and I had a choice: pay some off my mortgage, put it into an ISA, or buy solar. And I was really struggling with what to do. I was like, oh my God, because they're all good decisions. And solar was the for me the one I was most unsure about. But once I did all the maths, I worked out that my payback, so if you think an ISA is only about 3.5% payback,
Yeah.
my mortgage, I think, was about £37 a month saving by paying, well, say £10,000. And when I looked at the solar, my payback was 10.2%.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, what? I
Yeah.
just couldn't believe how much better it was. And I was like, well, I'm clearly going to do that. I'd
Yeah.
obviously gone for a battery as well. I did it last September and I am loving it. It's amazing. Now
Yeah.
I'm learning about, you're always learning with sustainability, and I'm learning about clipping at the moment where I'm generating too much. So
All
I'm
right.
losing energy because the inverter won't do it. I won't bore anybody else with that. But
Well,
no,
there are some fantastic organisations. I'm very close to. There is a community energy charity called Awel Amantawi,
yeah,
who have a solar side of their business called EGNI. We're working with EGNI at Orange
right.
Box at the moment to put solar panels on our roof. They do a fantastic, you know, community share scheme, which allows people to exactly what you were talking about. If I do have any spare money, you know, it doesn't always crop up these days
I know.
for everybody, but you know, if you do have some spare money, what do you do with it? Do you put it in a nicer? Do you? Yeah, they have a kind of solar share scheme where you can invest in them, and what they do is put solar panels at scale on mostly public buildings right across Wales. And there's hardly a town or a village that won't have been touched by them.
Wow.
Like community centres, schools, church halls, the National Velodrome. These are all places that have got, you know, EGNI solar panels on them. And what they're doing is investing. So you invest in them, but
Yeah.
you get a really solid payback,
Do you?
which is probably better than what you might get from an ISA these
You
days.
could trust it more as well because
Exactly.
you know where your investment's going.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, if you put it in an ISA, it's
Yeah.
going to a bank and the bank does something with that. You
But
don't know, it's not transparent.
no.
But with EGNI, it sounds like it is.
Yeah.
Because you know where it's going.
Absolutely.
And you can see where it's going.
Yeah, and it's local because so many of these big energy projects, and I think there's a lot of kickback against a lot of them in South Wales as well, because these big wind farms that we see appearing on our hillsides, they don't always generate money for Wales. This money is sort of is backed by, you know, all kinds of other governments. And
Foreign companies.
yeah, exactly, and it's trickling out of Wales.
Yeah.
So Awel Amantawi and EGNI, great to see community energy.
And what I'll add to that as well, because I forgot my point, so I'm glad you came in, was I was driving past, I think it used to be Rhondda kind of Housing Association, which I think are now Beacon, and they've been installing solar panels all around their social housing sites.
Yeah.
So the people who are who are struggling the most and need the most support, I was driving past a site the other day and literally every home, and it wasn't like 5 panels, it was
Yeah.
like the whole roof, both
Yeah.
sides were literally covered. And I know then, like, these people who need the help the most, they're getting it. Their bills are going to be covered. And it's just fantastic to see that happening, you know. So, you know, yeah, we'd love to see more grants. We'd love to see more support. And you do get low interest loans from Development Bank of Wales as well, which is great. Look at your local council. They do help here and there. But yeah, it's great to see throughout Wales. And this is where I see, and this is where I wish people would bang the drum for the Future Generations Act a bit more, because it's sort of happening because it exists.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
it didn't exist, the pressure wouldn't be there and the influence wouldn't be there. Maybe the decisions wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And if it is being influenced and decided because of that, I wish companies would say, we're doing this because of this act.
Yeah.
And that gets everybody behind it. Right.
I think the wording of the act, don't quote me, be something like, well, it calls for a fair and just energy transition, doesn't it? Yeah, exactly.
And it's all about not affecting the next, you know, the main one is don't affect the next generation. Whatever you do now, protect the future. And that's it. And people always think, oh, that's not going to affect me. It directly affects you. You know, you're just making sure that the things that you're going through now, they're never going to go through. But by going through that transition, you are going to transition into a better future. And I always say to people, sustainability doesn't have to change your life. It doesn't have to like be a big convulsive sort of thing where you're sacrificing everything. It could just be a small thing. You know, like I've got my reusable cup right here. You know, it just saves me waste, saves me rubbish, saves me from putting the bag out 3 times a week. I have less rubbish. You know, there's little things you can do. And doing those little incremental changes over time. I'm 6 years into my journey. And now I'm doing like 6 changes a year, where I started by doing 1 because it was difficult when I first started.
Yeah.
But bit by bit, I've been more and more convinced, pretty much probably like yourself. It just back in the days when you first started, you just start doing these little things. You go, oh, actually, this is great. Actually, it's brilliant. I should do a bit more of this. And that's what I encourage everybody to do. So, to finish it off, this is the best question. All right. Most positive question there is, because this is the bit I really look forward to. Is there a project or organisation in your orbit that you think is quietly doing brilliant work that GreenWales should go and see? In other words, who am I going to go and see next, guys?
Okay. I've definitely got a really solid one here. I mean, I've probably got a list. I've probably got a top 10, but
you can give me a top 3.
We have, well,
up to you.
I would definitely cite these guys, right? Stump Up for Trees. Yeah. Fantastic organisation doing tree planting at scale, the right tree in the right place.
Perfect.
Great for the soil, great for people's souls as well. This isn't just all about carbon. It is definitely about people and what their volunteers get out of it. Perfect. So these guys are awesome. I do have a relationship with another brilliant community-focused project that's quite close to me called Down to Zero.
Yeah.
And that is about... that's about food resilience. So
Isn't this a housing association as well?
Yeah, Cynntaf Housing Group.
Yeah.
So they basically manage and support and, for the most part, fund the project. But yeah, Down to Zero is more or less a market garden, an organic market garden where we grow fruit and vegetables, and it gives people the opportunity to interact in a way that they wouldn't normally, which sounds kind of crazy, but there are parts of Wales where we've really lost that connection with food and where it comes from. So that project is about restoring that connection. And
I think connection with people as well. I think you're right there. With society's not broken down, but that stopping in the street and having a chat, which is a very common thing. COVID sort of dismantled a lot of that for people, and I think some places have lost it. So by bringing an area where you can have that connection with a stranger that you don't know, and actually come out with something brilliant, I think that's a great project to have on the list. Great.
But top of my list is they sound very close, but is an organisation called Down to Earth.
Down to Earth, okay.
Yeah. And Down to Earth, I would definitely cite them in context of our conversation about the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, because the Act is about being proactive around truly sustainable development. This idea that you can have the sweet spot where you've got this absolutely perfect interaction between people, planet, and profit. They don't have to be disparate. The bubbles can be the same shape. And Down to Earth, who are kind of based on the Gower. So at the heart of it, I always find it quite difficult to describe. At the heart of everything that they do is super sustainable architecture. So they're about buildings.
Okay.
But they are out of all of the organisations over 30 years of working in design and sustainability that I've seen, they epitomise to me. They are the best example of truly sustainable development, because they're a functioning business, but they don't ever compromise. They work in the middle of those three bubbles, because everything that they do, from the materials that they use, how they build their buildings, and the social element as well, which is often the hardest
Yeah.
to marry in. They won't build a building without the participation of the groups that will be using it, which sounds kind of crazy. Like, if they're going to get involved in building a school, they won't get involved unless the children are part of the design process and the build process. If they're working in the healthcare sector on a project with a hospital, it will be the staff at the hospital and even the patients that are involved in the project. It sounds far-fetched, but they are doing it, and it is an absolute joy to see. I'm lucky enough to be a non-exec director for them now, so I get to see them more often than I did, because when I first came across them, if I'm being honest, probably about 6 years ago, I've been looking for an excuse to how on earth can I work more closely with these people, because they just absolutely blew me away. I went to their kind of annual conference, which was the least businessy annual conference I've ever been to.
Yeah.
Because it was in a field in 3TPs, and it sounds kind of hippie-ish, but it was amazing. It was brilliant, and it kind of, when you see an organisation working like that, it is really moving. And I found that a very moving experience, and I've been looking for an excuse to work with them. So when this opportunity to join as a non-exec came up, it was well over a year ago now, I absolutely jumped at it, and
Amazing.
they are incredible. They take my number one slot. Yeah,
I love that.
There's a guy, Mark McKenna, the CEO, the guy that runs it. Mark, you have to. Yeah, Mark needs to be your next guest.
Great. I look forward to it. And, if we go on the grassroots as well, we go to their sites. So, because it sounds amazing. And the way that they do things, they involve the people. Because the people who are, let's use the hospital, work at the hospital and are patients, they're going to have the best experience to be able to design a place that's going to make it better for the next people, for them themselves. So I can totally see how that works. And when you talk about the conference as well, we've all been to plenty of conferences, and when you're in this sterile building and it's all like rooms and breakout rooms, it's very it's just not very engaging, where I think if someone said, come to this field, we're going to have 3TPs, there's a lot of trust immediately put on the organisers, and I think actually there's nowhere to hide then. And that means what is going to be delivered has to have better value, but also the environment that's around just complements it as well. And you as a person, your stress levels up, you're not commuting to an incredibly busy city to go to a conference. So I can definitely see I might have to take a little bit of that away with me, so if I ever get to do a conference, maybe I'll just...
Well, that conference was at a site that they've worked on at Landock Hospital.
Wow.
Which is a really interesting project, because they've now got clinical research papers that have been published. So this isn't kind of...
there's research behind it.
This is solid. This is solid stuff. So this is one thing that they're very careful to do, is to track the benefits. So when the next project comes along, if there is any skepticism, you say, look, this is a published research paper which tracks the benefits for all of the participants, whether it was staff or the patients. It's amazing.
Thank you, Gareth. And in Wales, again, it can be quite a negative story sometimes, but all I ever see is positive answers, a positive story, and a positive future for Wales. And if this channel and these series can do anything, is to give people a bit of hope, connect people to projects. Someone might be living in the Gower and not be connected to that project, or in Swansea. And the whole point is bringing answers and solutions across Wales to push people towards these projects. And an orange box, and as yourself, because everybody who's chosen is a sustainable leader, and that leads me briskly on to the award for best. No. This is your life, Gareth. So everybody who comes on the channel becomes part of not a membership. We don't do memberships here because no. We do collectives. People who are actually doing things on the ground. People who are literally living and walking that life. So we'd love to give you this little badge, which just says you are being
Part of the
a
GreenWales collective.
You're part of the GreenWales collective, and that means then you get, I say, a quarterly newsletter. It's called the Collaboration Station. That's what it's called, and that just brings everybody together to try and create solutions, connections, and bringing businesses together to help them prosper and to help bring the answers for Wales. So you're now part of that, and I'd like to thank you very much.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Wales, building a better future together. Big thanks to Afango, powering sustainable productions, for making this possible. You're watching GreenWales, Wales, Future First. If you believe in the future of Wales, support it. Like, comment and subscribe.